Hello viewers, my name is Shubham Kumar. I am from MA final year, Department of English, DAV PG College. We are the members of the Savant's Book Club, which is under Student Forum Laureate. On my left is Kartikey Singh from MA final year, and on my right is Khushi Gupta and Hitesh Virat Sharma from MA first year. We are here to discuss Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree, a winner of International Booker Prize 2022. We will discuss on various perspectives in the book and the translation which followed later and resulted in winning such a massive scale prize. So first of all, we'll discuss on the translation. The translation of the book is quite different from the source text, which is in Hindi. We, the members of the book club, has covered it all, and we had compared both the translation as well as the source text. So we'll go over to Kartikey and hear from him that what he had noticed in the translation. Kartikey.
Thank you so much, Shubham, for the wonderful introduction. So, the translation of Red Samadhi, which is known as Tomb of Sand, is done by Daisy Rockwell. And this is not her first rodeo. She has previously translated authors like Upendra Ashk, Bhishma Sahani's Tamas was her third translation. And even Usha Priyamvada's Pachpan Khambe Lal Diware, which she translated amidst translating Red Samadhi or the Tomb of Sand. So, she completed her education in South Asian studies, and she's quite proficient in both the languages, Urdu and Hindi. And according to her, translating Red Samadhi was a very difficult task. And in comparison to Pachpan Khambe Lal Diware by Usha Priyamvada, which was a kind of holiday for her, the year-long debate still exists that is our translation as good as the original text and is meaning lost in translation. But we have to accept that fact. The original translation brought Red Samadhi to the public limelight all over the world.
This question is very prominent while we are talking about translation. Yeah. That how the text is different from the translation, exactly. What is found and what is lost in the translation. So
yes, you are absolutely right, and there are both pros and cons. There are meanings that are actually lost, and the original witty satirical language that Geetanjali Shree is so adept in is somewhere lost in that translation, and it's not as accurately depicted as it could have been.
But I believe that without Daisy Rockwell, it wouldn't have been possible for Geetanjali Shree to win the Booker Prize.
That's very true. That's very true, because the readers in Hindi are very limited, and the translation is still a very good translation. I would pick up examples where the meaning was added to the original text. There was a line in page 92 in Hindi and page 179 in English. Dimag hue dahi, ghar mein machi chela-chil. This is a not very artistic line, and the meaning is quite simple, which depicts the chaos ensuing in that house.
Just to cover that large proportion of
exactly.
audience.
Yeah. Right.
That's true.
Yeah, agreed.
So Daisy Rockwell took that line, Dimag hue dahi, ghar mein machi chela-chil, and she turned it around to their minds turned to curd, hue and cry occurred. So this basic introduction of the rhyme pattern added so much to the original essence of the text. And there are lines, there are parts that the character, one of the character Gambhir, the son of Ma.
Yeah.
Gambhir is both a noun as in the name of the character, and an adjective which quite denotes his personality. But instead of using the original name, which Daisy Rockwell actually did for most of the characters, she translated it to the serious son, and which was later turned on to the overseas son, which better depicted his personality.
Yeah.
And in an interview by The Wire, when asked about the translation, there was a question that which language is perhaps easier to translate, Hindi or Urdu? And very beautifully, Daisy Rockwell put this thing that Urdu is a very basic language which is very easy to translate, just like French. But English is somewhat more like Spanish, with lots of nuances, lots of metaphors. And from metaphor, I will jump to straight one of the other examples. There is an example in page number 79 Hindi and page 153 English, that the metaphor of classical Hindu music is used, the metaphor of alap. So two major names, Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Gandhi, have been connected, and Geetanjali Shree puts forward how you cannot take the name in this, you cannot take both of the name in that same alap. But Daisy Rockwell has translated to we can talk ourselves holes discussing. So this is where a part where the original text has lost some of its essence. So when asked why this happened, Daisy Rockwell was very adamant on how alap, the meaning of alap and the gravity of alap cannot divert the readers from the original essence of the text. Ki how some people won't know about Muhammad bin Tughlaq, but Gandhi is a very world-renowned figure.
Yeah.
So to not take away from that original meaning of the text, Daisy Rockwell went on and kind of simplified the original language of
And the using of contrasting
One more thing-
personalities is also there.
Yeah.
Like if you look on Tughlaq, that Tughlaq was a kind of a monarch which was well defined for cruelty. And if you will see Gandhi, then Gandhi is more of a kind of Gandhian thought, propounded non-violence and etc. many things. So
yeah, that sentence itself is complicated enough, and by translating the basic concept of alap, which was not very relevant in that sentence, although it did add to the meaning and the overall rasa that we talk about in Indian works, she took a creative liberty of simplifying that sentence to focus more on the idea and less on the beautification or the ornamentalization of that sentence.
One more thing I would like to bring light to that thing, that while reading the Hindi text, there I noticed that the text, the flow of the language is very different, and how that had been treated in translation is like a thing to discuss, because when Shree Geetanjali,
I wanted to add that in Hindi version she hasn't used the Poon Vinam, right?
Yeah.
It's going on flow.
Yes,
But
that's
English
in
version, there the Daisy Rockwell has used the comma
Commas.
to indicate the writing.
Like there's a sentence
Yeah.
that lasts two pages in Hindi and 3.5 pages in English.
that is quite a thing when
Yeah.
when you
Entirely
read that
without
thing, yeah.
any punctuation. It's
Right.
like said in one breath, written in one breath. And
very small means very small things are to be traced by the readers.
But
You can see
it's
that
like
the
how
eloquent
the
languages.
the deep we'll go, many things we'll find. But after all, we can see that we wouldn't be reading this book if Daisy Rockwell has not
that's
converted
true.
it
And
to English.
it's really commendable upon if we discuss how good a work she has done.
Yeah.
Because this work was translated during the COVID time, and she had basically no connection with Geetanjali Shree, and she could not meet her, and there was not even a single video conferencing. She did all of those amidst thousands and thousands of email. And people joke around that the emails itself can be turned into a whole book by its own. So that's also a thing. But there are some lines that are very beautifully put forward by Daisy Rockwell. There's a use of alliteration and wordplay. There's a very beautiful line that I'll quote. A scrap that flutters and flaps and flitters and swirls about the branch into a ribbon of desire that wind and rain unite to bind there. Each time they tie another knot, one more knot, a no knot, a no knot, a new desire, new, becoming the new refusal of no, flutter, flap. So if we look at the basic meaning of the sentence, it's pretty straightforward. But the way Geetanjali Shree has originally presented this line in the text, it's very beautiful. And to carry forward that whole essence into the translation, it was a very tough nut to crack. And Daisy Rockwell did it very beautifully.
The use of repetition on the last line, that's flap, added musicality and a bit.
Exactly,
yes.
that added to that whole rhythmic pattern to the
Rhythmic pattern
statement.
She has left no stone unturned, basically.
Even if we take away from that basic fact of adding beauty and meaning to the sentence, there's a very reader-friendly part that Daisy Rockwell incorporated. Like Geetanjali Shree used the name of two very prominent writers, Desani and Rajdeep. So Rockwell took the liberty of elaborating the name of Desani, G.V. Desani, so that people find the Google search quite easy, and they are very well versed that who are the writers that Geetanjali Shree actually quoted in her text. So this is another part. There are pages and pages written in italic in the original Hindi text, and critics have called it as subconscious and part of absurdist writing. But Rockwell says it's like filmy songs in Bollywood movies.
Now that also seems that how narrator is like revolving around the ideals of fluency in the language. How the narrator is changing places with himself only.
Himself.
She's wearing different robes, when the text is in italics and when the text is in normal font, and we can notice the difference, how the flow of language and how the flow of ideas is differentiated in both kind of text.
And as the story increases and as the time passes out, you can see that the language become more poetical. And straightforward kind of language is very
she has
used.
the lyrical prose in her writings basically.
Exactly. The fact itself that the original book is around 350 pages and the translation is 700.
Yeah.
Adding a blank page after each chapter, that shows how much care and attention she has put forth in that original text.
The English text is quite vast. It's a big thing to cover up.
Exactly.
Right.
So she compensated by the lost in translation factor, by adding more volume to the translation, so that no stones are left unturned and no idea is left unexplored.
Exactly.
There is a 15-page description of a self-important man's inability to laugh in the English version.
Yeah.
Which is very important, because the idea is somewhere lost in that translation, and if she refuses to elaborate, the basic gist of the text would somewhat not be picked up by the readers that are not from India.
That is the thing, how humor has been dealt in Hindi version and how the humor has been translated in the English
Both
version.
the writers have given their best
That
to
is-
make
that
this
is a-
novel a
Because we have a
success.
vast audience to cover
Yeah.
Hindi only, so therefore
There are certain themes also.
Yeah, so what do you think about the perspectives of the text, and what kind of philosophy do you think is infused inside of the text? Because in terms of philosophy, I was very amazed while reading this, because Geetanjali Shree is including lots of ideals of Indian legends and ideals, and then the translator is translating that ideals into another language which does not relate with the same culture. So while dealing with things like Tagore, like writers like Rushdie, Desani, and even from the myths also, and from the legends of Indian myths, like you could say Mandan Mishra is also mentioned, Firaq Gorakhpuri is also mentioned, and how the writer is dealing with that, and how she is dealing with the philosophy of those writers, how Daisy Rockwell is dealing. That is a work of art, I would say. So how what do you think?
See, Daisy Rockwell and both Geetanjali Shree, they have given a lot of themes in these books, whether it be the feminist point of view or the partition. I would like to start by quoting one of a very good quote which I liked. Once you have got woman and a border, a story can write itself. Even women on their own are enough. Women are stories in themselves, full of stirrings and whisperings that floats on the wind, that bends with each blade of grass. So basically,
That's so beautiful.
That's so captivating, I would say.
Yeah. So basically, by these lines, we can see that Geetanjali Shree has portrayed in her book that the invisibility of women in the Indian society, right? Like it is very natural to see like how in 21st century women are being dealt.
Yeah.
And the miseries and the trauma they are suffering from, and they are not able to recite it in front of the family members, just because for the sake of not hurting their feelings or not making them a bit like they are being driven by certain thoughts that a family member is not well or is not means reacting with his full efforts. So it is a kind of thing that is seen in the society right now. Also in many of the parts you can see that the things which are propounded, like many more things related to women, because women are nowadays considered to be like a special means a special thing. They are given more importance.
They are set upon a pedestal.
Yeah.
Basically, she had shed the lights on the sufferings of women and how they are dealing with those sufferings.
That's true. There's a very beautiful line. Everything will be fine, said Bahu, not directly to her husband, but for him, which was the usual style of speaking with one another, half turned away.
Half turned away.
So there is no direct confrontation between the patriarchy and the female part of the society. The usual conversation that we had are very passive aggressive.
Yeah.
So that's very self-reflective of the position of women that we still have that in the society.
See, despite all the modernity in this century, men always try to, precede the social and psychological proceedings. Like they're always in novel also the example which you quoted. It's also like They're not talking to each other face to face. They're half turned. Yeah.
That is the thing. And one thing I picked up in your quote, Geetanjali Shree talking about stories. This is scattered in the whole book.
Exactly.
Yes.
She is talking about stories. For example, I would quote this. This is in Hindi. उसे मालूम था कि कहानी को बक्स बंद, कैनवस बंद, नजर बंद नहीं किया जा सकता, तो उसने कभी ऐसी कोशिश नहीं की. इसे बरक्स वो तो हर बार कोई खुली खाली जगह छोड़ दिया करता कि कहानी बढ़ ले, अपनी चाह से किसी और राह हो ले. And this line is like very philosophical. And one thing Kartikey said about the italicization, the philosophy emerges in the italicized text. That is the thing to notice.
Exactly.
When the narrator is like holding the subconscious mind of herself, then she's presenting these thoughts, the thoughts about stories. In previously at the starting of the book, there is also a line that the historians are like they are less better than a storyteller. So she says about this historians that they represent the facts, but the storyteller, she mentions the word kathakar. They uses their imagination to explore even the tiniest thing, which
They
could
embody
be
basically creation.
Yeah, that is the thing. So this philosophical terms which is scattered throughout the book about stories, about history, about philosophy, about poets, about poetry, everything like is presented on a very wide canvas of text.
Yes.
So that is the thing of perspectivization, what we see in this text.
Basically, it is all about a woman who is 80 years old. There was one line, I'm not reminding, it's just skipping from my mind. She was so small that she could slip anywhere. Like it is set for that 80-year-old
Yeah.
She would
lady.
slip through the gaps.
Yeah, she could slip
would
through
slip
the
through
gaps.
The metaphors are
Yes.
brilliant. Actually,
Yes.
they are
It is-
very
It is used to describe the initial position of Ma and how she was invisible to the society, that she could slip through in the gaps of a
Yes.
crowd and no one would even
Never
notice.
notice her.
Yeah.
That's
The
right.
very first line also suggests that the use of a great metaphor like the telltales itself,
Yeah.
the telltales itself, and
That is one of a very good
the use
opening lines.
of personification or giving human abilities to a non-human thing is well written by Daisy Rockwell in the translation book. So yeah,
That is the power of metaphors and personification somewhere used in the novel.
used to elevate the tone and to
Yeah.
make reader more engaging in the story.
The most captivating metaphors employed by Geetanjali Shree at the beginning of the book is the chaukhut which she talks about.
Yes.
Yeah, and the walls, the diwar which
The
she
divans
talks about.
and the,
How
and the cracks on the wall.
Yeah, how
There are 3-page descriptions about the walls.
Yeah,
like
that
how
is very-
she's facing the wall.
Her attention to inanimate objects like
Yes.
the cane, the wall,
So-
even the border is something that does not exist very really. Border is a very social construct of mind.
Mind.
But the amount of value and the amount of importance that she gives to such inanimate object is just immaculate. It's beautiful.
when you look at these objects, they assume the title of narrators at a very large lens throughout the story.
Yes.
Because the chaukhut is like the very funny scene which she wrote about the Reebok shoes.
Reebok
Yes,
shoes.
And that is very nice, and it is very symbolic.
The daughter coming in and the daughter.
Very layered thing, and that is presented in such a
Yeah.
humorous way,
Humorous way.
and you could notice that the narrator is the chaukhut itself.
Mhm.
See,
Yeah.
the inanimate object is narrating
Sure.
such a satirical, layered form of concept and ideas, and that is very nice to read while reading. When you look at the text and how very meanings are embedded in very small
Small things.
droplets, and that is very beautiful.
Yeah.
And Shubham, as you say, that example of Reebok, that denotes the amount of wit used in the original text,
Yeah.
which was somewhere lost in that.
Actually,
translation.
I would very like to share that line, that Hindi line, and it goes like this: अपदस्थ बेटी घर में आती हुई और पदासीन बहू घर से बाहर जाती हुई, ये कौन सी उल्टी गंगा रीबॉक
Reebok
बाहर.
बाहर.
See this, how satirical this text
Yeah.
is in itself.
In
The
English-
single sentence, the amount of meaning and depth that was in the first half was compensated by the amount of
Yeah.
satire in the second
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I agree to this point because the Hindi version is extremely wonderful. If we will go through the English version, it's just the daughter is entering, the daughter-in-law exists.
See,
That's
that is what is lost in translation.
Yeah, that's the difference.
That's the difference.
Yes.
And
Though the theme of this book deals with the anxieties and the depressions and partition stories, but the writer has left no stone unturned in making it more funny, humorous, and with the wits, the language she has used. That gives us the excitement to read the book.
And on the topic of depression, which is a very serious topic, I'll go further. The use of no in the text.
Yeah.
The
Ma
amount
uses.
of times
Yeah.
the daughter contradicts everyone, and how the role reverses as the story proceeds, and how Ma's depression and retirement to bed is seen as her no. There's a very beautiful paragraph. The word no, once so useful in my life, must have been dislodged from the dust where it lay, but it's not that special anymore, because one must have someone to say it to, and I'm my own master now, but it belonged to me and only me. So how did Ma get her hands on it? So these lines are said by Beti about a Ma, and it's beautiful how the analogy of depression and retirement and refusal to do anything is compared with that childish innocence of saying no to every other task because the child just refuses to agree to their parents. It's sort of that rebel phase every child goes through.
Beti found
And it
herself slipping in the motheringhood because earlier she used to ignore those things, but with the passage of time, the roles were reversed.
yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
she was dealing her mom as a child.
Yeah. The perspective is very wide scale.
Wide scale,
So I
yes.
would like to talk about the how the text is written. What is the analysis of language?
Yes.
Could you say something on that, Virat?
Yes, of course, because the text in the text, as we can see that many of the poetic devices are used like metaphor, imagery, and personification to elevate the tone and to make reader more engaging in the text and to brought out that musicality and rhythm in the
Yeah.
text. You can easily trace the personification and imagery, the poetic devices in the text. Some of the beautiful lines I can quote right now that two women, one mother, one daughter, one growing upwards and one growing downwards.
Yeah.
Which very well signify and propounds that what the generations are, how
Yes.
generation is means one generation is somehow bending downwards and another generation is somehow coming upwards, and the change of ideas, the change of emotion, the change of personality between the mother and daughter. As you can see that now mother has become stubborn and started saying no, and now
Exactly,
daughter
exactly.
is
Yeah.
going into another side and just trying
To
to
this
put
point, I'd like to quote one of her writings that she says to KK, Beti says to KK, that don't you think youth comes at the wrong time when we haven't lived at all? It comes and then it's gone and we don't even notice. It should come in old age, after we have had all our experiences. Then we understand desire and enthusiasm.
That line
The
is so
same
brilliant. It
situation- yeah.
must be, it
Yeah.
has to be on a T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Because
is
it is so,
absolutely brilliant.
goes with the character of Ma.
Again, there's a line that about that Beti and Ma reversal and the imagery that you talk about. Beti sits among her books pretending to work, and when she lifts her pen, the bangles on her wrists jangle, the ones Amma had given her. And at this, the question jingles afresh: when did I become me? And am I me, or have I become Ma?
Yeah.
So the relationship is represented like through the language. I mean, the language is savory. You could read it and like
Amazing.
go into a trance.
Yes.
This relationship is also represented between the mother and the daughter and KK also.
Yes.
I would like to quote this line. Geetanjali, she has written this in Hindi. मन भी नहीं है बेटी ने जाना पर शायद अवचेतन में कि माँ और प्रेमिका एक खाल में नहीं रहते आपकी खाल में माँ उगाए तो बड़ी आसानी से प्रेमिका की केचुली उतर जाती है so this is very like it's represented in a so traditional way how a lover and how his
Mom,
mistress
yeah.
and how their family are interacting, how they are colliding in a
Colliding
similar
in
kind of
similar
environment.
That's very that stereotypical notion
Yeah.
of saas bahu ka anban sort of thing.
Sort of.
So
And
that is very
yeah.
beautiful represented in this text. And I would also like to talk about the play of words, how Geetanjali Shree has played with the Hindi thing and how it has been translated. For example, this kind of thing, like the text flows like this. The chapter opens, उसे तरह तरह से बजाने में लगे, यो माँ अपनी सांस के संग करने लगी है, लंबी लंबी श्वास निश्वास गहराती और ध्वनियों में जोड़ती. So this is the difference between how in some parts she flows like non-stop. There is no comma, full stop, any purn viram. She flows like
kind of stream of consciousness
for 2
generation.
pages, and in some lines she stops just after words. After every word she stops. For example, one word I had noticed, she starts explaining the relationship between the mother and the bigger son, the eldest son, and the writer writes, एक माँ थी, and she stops and said माँ जैसी. So subtle that thing is.
Yes,
You
exactly.
could not fall into the trap that she is superfluous. She also is subtle in her writing, so that really like impresses us. Okay.
Yeah.
And about the themes and perspective, that has a very
The
large
most
canvas.
important one
Yeah.
is the LGBTQ, which
Yeah.
we haven't discussed
Yes.
yet.
So
Talking about
Yeah.
Rosie,
that
is also
Rosie.
important.
I mean, this traditional robe she is wearing and
Wearing.
how she is dealing with such a modern topic. With
Yeah.
such like the engineering is very great.
Great.
I mean, it has been handled with such delicacy and smartness.
Yeah, she handles it with the cleverness. She just not only got the character, but she has tried to portray the with the feeling of empathy.
Yeah.
Basically, when we see the character of Rosie Bua and when she dies, there are tears in our eyes.
Yeah,
because
of course.
We
Of course.
go
The
through
amount
it.
of nuanced attention that is given
Exactly.
to every single theme, which are very minor, and the LGBTQ theme or the theme about Rosie Bua, who is a kinner, has not been given so much weightage that it overshadows the original plot of the
Exactly.
book. But it's so well placed, and it's put forward in a very novel way without overemphasizing, so that it garners special attention. And you're talking about how it made you cry. That's a very beautiful thing, that the Hindi version, I've read the Hindi version as well, and the amount of satire and the wordplay and the wit that Geetanjali Shree has used, it just refuses you to get lost in that depressing thought and the themes that are actually discussed in the book. And the breaking point me was the death of a partridge,
Yeah.
which is very beautiful, that a death of a innocent creature is not merely about just a creature, but it sort of combines everything that was happening in the book before that, and you get only one moment to sort of shed your emotions and feel it actually, because the wit so beautifully disguises all the deep themes that Geetanjali Shree manages quite proficiently.
Because she has tried to portray the theme, like how in 21st century people are dealing with the transgenders. Basically, if you go through the novels, you will find that when Rosie Bua was missing, then Beti and Ma went to the police station. How the inspector dealt with the situation, and later when the news came into the newspaper, the part that sentence of transgender that was missing, like they narrated the whole story.
Yeah, that scene was.
Yeah.
That scene was very
That's
symbolic.
the harsh
Symbol-
reality
yeah.
of our India today.
Yeah.
Because how the torture they are suffering, they are being murdered, they are being strangled to death. So there are a lot of things which transgenders are suffering and going through.
However, now in India, some laws are made regarding them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're talking about murder, deaths,
and
and
this all.
India. We have to talk about the border theme.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
that-
partition.
Partition and borders.
The book is being sold on the basis that it is a partition novel.
It's a partition
Yeah.
novel.
We
It
can't, we
has
can't miss
joined
that.
the partition literature.
I'll just bring forth to light the line used. It's a conversation that Ma has to a stranger in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So the stranger says to Ma, "Your address is in India, which is very far from here." The Ma replies, "It is where it is. You are the one who's far, son." He further says, "I am from here. You have travelled here." And to which she replies, "No, son, I did not come here. I left here."
Yeah.
So that's allotment of different places to somewhere else, and assigning the places to them and telling them you cannot cross your borders. it's in one of those lines it's written that borders are meant to be crossed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Borders are meant to overcome, and nothing substantial in life can be done without crossing a border. So
This book is about crossing border and defining identity.
exactly. So
Basically. So Tomb of Sand is not a tragic tale about partition, but it is the something related to the story that is narrated with the essence of feelings devoted in the writings.
And as you can see that the title which is written that
Yeah,
Tom of Sand
that-
is also
that-
well versed by Geetanjali Shree in the Hindi
Yeah, of course.
Hindi book also, that why she used the title Tomb of Sand, or how sand is somehow interconnected with the theme of the
Samadhi.
story. Whole
No,
story.
this idea of sand and tomb and statues, these ideas are very much intricately dealt throughout the text. So we could see the writer defining the title
Yes,
herself,
herself.
and she drops the idea of statues and
Statues.
a samadhi.
That
Yes,
the Murti
Samadhi.
of
Yeah,
Buddha
going
which is
forward, saying this,
sleeping,
there are so many themes and there's so many discussions that it's impossible
to discuss
to discuss everything
Yeah.
in such a short
Yeah,
span
yeah.
of time.
Such
So
a short
I would really request Shubham to wrap it up and tell
Yeah.
me what are your final views about this book.
The book here, we are leaving this on a very beautiful turn. The title of the text itself, Raid Samadhi or the Tomb of Sand. It has been a great read, of course, and the both Hindi and English. Although I relate mostly through the Hindi text,
Yeah.
and my sites are on Hindi text, but when we look at the artistry in the translation as well as the engineering which has gone into the conversion of ideas which are very much inherent to India and Indian culture,
True.
and they have been translated in not so foreign languages, English. So this whole myriad of text which we have here, and such a great perspectivization we have. Everything is dealt with such a good manner. I mean, the reader does not feel boredom anywhere.
Boredom anywhere,
No.
yes.
I mean,
The starting-
that death of Rosie Bua, which is very much heartbreaking for
Yeah, heartbreaking
every
for
reader.
any-
So how Geetanjali Shree announces that in her text. I mean, every chapter is divided into sections. And the declaration of death of Rosie is just mentioned in a whole one section. And it is written in Hindi, Rosie mar gayi. So that is
Spoiler alert
itself
for
is-
those who have
yeah.
not read the book.
That is-
Our apologies for
That is really
our
heartbreaking.
apologies.
So
And the main part about this book is the identity.
yeah, of course.
Because in early pages, you'll see that the protagonist of the story is known as Ma.
Yeah.
But later, when she went to Pakistan, there she finds her true identity.
True.
She is Anwar's Chanda.
Anwar's.
Yeah, of
Yes.
course.
What a beautiful note to end that she turns from Ma.
To Anwar's
Chanda.
Chanda. Yeah.
So, thank you, viewers.
Thank
you
you
viewers
for
for joining
watching
us.
Thank you.